Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to all to this session on AI and green in the context of the high-level conference on AI, from ambition to action. I think there is no better topic when we talk about going from ambition to action than the fight to counter climate change and the fight for the decarbonization of our economy and for overall sustainability. And today we want to talk about this because as we now arrive in mid-September 2021 with several initiatives that have been adopted on artificial intelligence, in particular at the EU level, we have the sense that we have tackled massively the risks of AI, in particular in the proposed Artificial Intelligence Act. We are also observing quite a lot of debate at the international level on responsible AI development, on trustworthy AI development. There is a key element here that we thought also in preparing this session deserves the spotlight at the moment, which is the opportunities of AI, because the more big challenges that we have ahead of us, the pandemic and climate change in particular, become almost insurmountable for us in looking at this. The more we understand and we realize that we need digital technologies alongside with many other things, but we crucially need also digital technologies to row in the same direction of the other policies that aim at decarbonization for the long term. And we also know that artificial intelligence, like many other disruptive, powerful technologies, can be a force for good, but can also be a force for bad, or can also exert negative impacts on the environment. Now, in the past few days, I have written a blog post that was posted on the AI Alliance platform that somehow set the stage for the discussion of today, in which I basically recalled that the massive contributions that artificial intelligence and related technologies can provide in the domain of climate will not necessarily happen by themselves. There is a need for a cooperation and coordination between the public and the private sector, between regulators and developers and deployers of AI systems. There is a need to align incentives. There is a need to reward sustainable behavior and solutions. And in order to do this, we need to work at all levels of government. Now, speaking about all levels of government, from the very local to the international organizations, I think today we have a fantastic panel that will help us go through the emerging use cases and applications of AI that can be deployed in climate policy. And we will take the different contributions sort of in a top-down way, if you wish, because starting from the international organizations and arriving at the more applied level, and then zooming out a little bit more into the EU policy level, so hearing from the European Parliament and the European Commission. Now, this leads us to the first of our 6 speakers, Shireen Zorba. Shireen, you have an outstanding career in international organizations and at the United Nations, working at the intersection between science and policy. How much do we need that today, not only for climate, but also looking at the debate on the COVID-19 pandemic and the behavioral impacts that this has created, the trust in science. I give the floor to you, Shireen, for your intervention, and we will take then comments and questions as we move on with the other panelists. So thanks for being with us, Shireen. The floor is yours.
Priya, thank you so much, and it's really a delight for me to be part of this very important discussion and with this excellent panel. So I'm here to share with you today what we have learned the past 4 years or so about the incredible challenges and the extraordinary opportunities, as Andrea puts it, the promise and the peril of exponential technologies and their applications to further the global environmental agenda and the achievement of the SDGs. And it is really very special for me that we are able to share this experience as part of the framing of the topic that goes, as you said, Andrea, from the international to the very, very local. because indeed technologies have invaded every aspect of our lives today, and we experience that from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. Now, I wanted to also try and attempt at connecting the social, technological, policy aspects of the discussion, because it's very difficult to try and approach that in isolation. It really has to be seen in a very holistic manner. Now, upon the launch of the United Nations Science Policy Business Forum on the Environment in 2017, it is the UN's today fastest growing multi-sector body that works in the intersection between the UN, industry, Earth observations, big technology globally. And the forum, when it first convened in December, and we had the pleasure of having Jean Dussart, we were very happy to have DG Connect as part of this discussion, members of the European Parliament, and many others from Europe, but all over the world. We looked at how do we manage the conversation about big data and frontier technologies. And it became clear that we required to bring very diverse sectors. And believe me, we discovered the first time we convened the high-level working group on big data and exponential technology. At that time, we called it frontier technologies. We discovered that we do not speak the same language. We are not one community. We do not see things the same way. And there are huge gaps of experience and knowledge between us. So the first call was to really try and bring these diverse worlds together, to listen to each other, to learn, and to learn what language, what vocabulary we are going to develop in order to maintain communication and to build trust. And trust here is really in capital letters. So I am happy to say that there has been progress, hardly enough. The work of the Big Data Group, and as I said, Jean Dussart, the DG Connect, and the partners within the European Commission, they've worked very closely with us on this. And this work directly catalyzed the unanimous decision by the United Nations Environment Assembly, the highest level decision-making body on the environment, to mandate the development of a big data strategy by 2025. Progress led by UNEP and partners, and there will be a new working group before the end of the year, and we do extend a hand for cooperation and working together to be part of this discussion. Back to you on that, Andrea, and to the team here. Let me share with you what we have learned so far during this journey, hoping that we continue to work together as we discover and scope it. The challenges ahead cannot be bridged with each sector working independently of the other. We need to work in unison, both sectorally and globally. And Europe is at the heart of this in so many different ways, including, of course, development cooperation. Because the very technologies we are tackling, whether it's digital, AI, Internet of Things, quantum, and more, maybe more in the future that are still being tested today, they defy in their very approach. So I will not talk about AI isolation of the rest of the exponential technologies. I'm also happy to share perspectives of where we may want to consider going and pathways to take this journey together. Hardly anything that's in conclusion, but rather things that continue to be in development. So a few points very quickly. There is a significant need to develop policies that empower the deployment of new technologies for the environment, but in an equitable, transparent, ethical, and fair manner, one that leaves no one behind. How do you do that? We have to do it together with the big tech, and we need to read the scope of what big tech means to us today. We've already started this journey by building trust. I will not mention specific big tech, but some of them are working very, very closely with us. And this is why I'm extending a hand. Let's join this group. Let's work together. We are happy to join yours because some are willing to review some of these policies voluntarily. And I think this is not the end of things, but the beginning. And it's a good first step. And this is a prerequisite to implementing the SDGs as a whole, including the environmental dimension of the SDGs. So there is this perspective of environment, green. Well, we have 24 environmental indicators across all the SDGs. This is the essence of this SDGs, which is integration. So in our own approach, when we talk about solutions and technologies, we have to underline integration. We need to strengthen environmental big data management, integration, and analytics using the latest technologies, noting that we have what we call ocean data, but only drops of information. And in integration, we have law pilots, including one on marine litter, with voluntary contributions from, for example, if you don't mind, I'll mention IBM, for example, but it's not the only one. We're working with the others, with Google, with Amazon, and the others, where data integration, we are still discovering what it means, and where citizen science is a very big player. And I'll come to citizen science in a second. We have just launched the day before yesterday, the very first global partnership on citizen science headquartered in Vienna, registered with an interim board that I'm very proud and very privileged to be sitting on. Citizen science is something that has to be at the heart of discussion when we talk about big data. So we need to produce knowledge out of big data, knowledge that is open to all. So open data is still a big issue, and that informs decision-making in policy, but also business, and indeed, hopefully, one day, all aspects of our lives. The forum and its partners recommend that we use big data and exponential technologies to deliver societal solutions that help consumers adopt sustainable lifestyles, help producers measure and disclose environmental impact, help investors assess environmental risk, and regulators monitor real-time progress. Exponential technologies, including digital, AI, Internet of Things, and everything in between, can transform industry towards a more sustainable path. We've seen some amazing examples back in February when we convened what it can do when we talk about alternative materials to plastics in terms of fertilizers, irrigation, but policies and financial tools to power the transformation. And what this group and the role of DG Connect and beyond in the European Commission can be quite transformational globally, not only at the regional level. I'll mention citizen science again, and I'll say that it can contribute to assessing 35% of the SDG environmental indicators. And we may be aware that big data is the fuel of anything that's technology and AI related. They feed on big data. And without that, we don't have knowledge. 86% almost of data required for the SDG indicators still missing. So because we are of course referring to quality data, not any kind of data. So if citizens is pledging through the different means and capacities available citizen science globally to catalyze 35% of that gap, that would be immense. How much investment are we really putting into that? There are no policies that recognize citizen science as science that can be used for decision making. There are no processes for validation, verification, and so on. So these are areas we're working on. We're extending a hand to work together. And Europe has always had the initiative and pioneered the work on citizen science. Now we need to bring that back to the focus. I would like to underscore the importance of Earth observation technologies to indigenous people. This is a very important part of the equity component because indigenous people are guardians of biodiversity, of the natural world. They are among those who are most affected by climate change and environmental degradation. So we were very pleased to work with the group on Earth observations on this. And the final point, I can see you at your watch. So the forum also recommended bridging the gender gap in Earth observation science by involving women early in all Earth observation data projects. I thank you very much.
You will get another chance later, Shireen, to elaborate further on this point later on in our session. But thanks very much for sharing these thoughts and these early findings of the initiatives you've been launching. Indeed, there is a difference between pointing exclusively at the environment or looking at the SDGs, but also looking at the distributional impacts of climate change. These are different ways, or different angles, if you wish, to approach the issue that have different consequences in terms of how do you organize policy. We heard this morning from Ursula von der Leyen in the State of the Union speech the needs to really trust science She mentioned specifically the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. She urged policymakers in the European Parliament in particular to take action more swiftly and to push even more, because the younger generation is actually putting a lot of pressure on us. This also is something that is important for European agencies. So on the EU side, I turn to Stefan Jensen, who in the European Environmental Agency has been deploying some of these technologies and has been overseeing the application of some of the technologies. So Stefan, I give you the floor. Let's see actually what concretely is being done also in terms of data and AI technologies in the EEA. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Andrea, for the introduction, the friendly introduction. A warm welcome to the audience from Copenhagen here. The EEA, as mentioned, is in the interface between policy, science, and administration. And we have embarked, of course, to embrace digitalization in various forms. And one area, sub-area, is indeed the uptake of artificial intelligence. And I like to share with you very shortly the different areas in which we are doing this. And I would speak first about, let's say, practical and technical ways. Our institution is dealing with environmental reporting of data from the countries on climate and environment. We are having experience with artificial intelligence technologies for gap filling, for air quality data. There we can model when station data is missing. It's very concrete. In data analysis, which we're doing with all these data which we are receiving from the countries, we are just starting with first work where we utilize machine learning ideas and technologies to improve water resource management and at the same time develop foresight ideas and estimates. So that is also a very practical area where we learning using artificial intelligence. We are just starting to engage in two of these so-called digital twins. So these are also models, digital models of the Earth based on certain, let's say in this case, environment and climate phenomena. One is on climate adaptation, the other one on the water cycle. All these, the gap filling thing on the reporting is something we're doing already since a while, but all these other activities are rather new activities. So for us, artificial intelligence, and I want to today to speak in particular about artificial intelligence, is still a rather new technology. And we have to take it up, we have to train people for it, and we still have a piece of work to do there. We are a networking organization, so we do work with the countries. For example, with the environment agencies across Europe, we are learning what they are doing. So we're doing meetings with them. We're learning, for example, from Germany. The Umweltbundesamt is now building an artificial intelligence lab. They are forerunners in a way there. That's not possible to gain this experience for all the agencies, but it's commonly recognized that digital literacy has to grow amongst staff or amongst consultants, which are being used to execute the work. We're having a similar exchange also, as the previous speaker said, on the European level and also with UNEP. What can we do to increase this digital literacy, where the handling of artificial intelligence is, of course, only one element. This being the more technical and practical area, I'd like to mention a second area in which we are applying artificial intelligence, and this is this area of creating and sharing knowledge, and that is a key task for our agency as well. And we have one nice example, I think, which we are about to publish. There we have been doing a study to identify the usage of digital technologies as enabler for decarbonisation. So decarbonisation shall be addressed, and that study works in the areas of mobility, architecture, and energy, and there is artificial intelligence is being utilized, and we can give evidence on how much CO2 can be saved, in particular in the building and in the mobility area. So there are really practical experiences which give us ideas about the usability. We are, of course, aware of the risks. We are looking into rebound effects in these studies, and I'm happy to go further into any of those experiences we have. So in summary, artificial intelligence is for us a super important tool to further do analysis towards the Green Deal goals. And we are at the beginning together with our network, and we are looking very much into the future to embrace this technology. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. And I would actually call on the attendees, the audience, to actually perhaps formulate direct questions to Stefan on Slido, if you want him to elaborate a little bit further on each of those projects that he has mentioned. But definitely also the emphasis on the need for better data, but also the various and the pervasive approach of artificial intelligence into a number of different aspects of the work of the EEA is very valuable. And I think I'll probably ask Shireen and Stefan to interact a little bit further on the interface between the EU at the international level when we go into the second part of our panel, because I think the need for good quality data and the need for citizen participation, so the broadest possible participation, but also the needs to put together the efforts. I mean, is it useful that more than one country develops a digital twin of the Earth, or would it be better to actually collaborate in sharing resources and data and supercomputing power as well, to really enhance, engage in enhanced modeling of the impacts and simulations in a more collaborative, let's say, setting. We'll move to this later, but perhaps if Lynn Kak wants to comment on this, she certainly is very well qualified. Lynn is CEO of Climate Change AI and at the same time teaches at the Hertie School of Governance. So perhaps also my references to this very governance-related questions would be familiar to you and would trigger some of your considerations and comments. So I give you the floor, Lynn, for your first intervention.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I wanted to use my intervention to maybe throw out some ideas about potential policy approaches we could take. So, I mean, we have heard now that AI can be used in many different ways to address climate change. And some of the applications I also wanted to mention is that can be used to develop next generation batteries. You can monitor land use changes with it, or you can also improve rail operations, which are all very, very different applications in different sectors. Then AI can also counteract efforts to address climate change, which we already touched on today. So for example, it's been used in fossil fuel sectors, oil and gas sector, so it can help to make exploration cheaper and also boost reserves. And then it can also emit directly greenhouse gases through its computational energy consumption. So this really just shows that we have to holistically account for all the effects that AI may have on climate change. So both the positive and the negative effects, and we have to address all of these. And I wanted to use the statement to address what kind of policy approaches we could employ also in the EU. And I wanted to touch on 3 approaches very, very briefly. The first one is to promote research, development, and demonstration. Then I wanted to talk about increasing transparency and also enabling regulation. And the third one is proactively assessing and mitigating AI's climate effects in the future. So for the first point, we need to do more to promote research, development, and demonstration of AI systems that help address climate change. So this can, for example, be done by creating and enabling interdisciplinary careers at this intersection, about enabling access to AI expertise for SMEs especially, and also creating a more diverse and trusted space of AI solution providers that can actually help organizations and businesses to deploy AI solutions in a way that helps climate change mitigation and adaptation. And here, for example, dedicated institutes could be a way that offer help developing AI systems in those climate relevant sectors, also having the sector expertise. So the next point is that we need more information and more transparency about the different emissions effects of AI systems. So this is on the one hand, their computational energy consumption, but also the effects that result from the way that AI systems are deployed. And here the proposed harmonized rules on AI could actually provide an important opportunity to collect more information and increase transparency. So an idea would be to expand the reporting requirements for high-risk AI systems to then also collect data that's relevant to estimate greenhouse gas emissions impacts. And this approach, such an approach, could help to collect much needed data for decision-making on decarbonization strategies. And then the last point I wanted to touch on is how to deal with the incredible uncertainty that AI could potentially introduce to decarbonization pathways. And for that, we definitely need a climate-focused technology assessment of the present and future AI systems and trends. And we also need to start thinking today about ways that AI could pose risk for climate change mitigation and adaptation and what we can do about it. And one very concrete thing one could do is, again, related to the harmonized rules on AI, because here we are not very explicitly addressing the risk related to climate change in the criteria for high-risk AI systems. So one approach could be to really spell this out more concretely and explicitly mention environmental protection, including climate change mitigation, as one of the fundamental rights that trigger a high-risk classification if they are affected negatively by AI. So these kind of recommendations resulted from the work that we do at Climate Change AI. We are connecting stakeholders of the different sectors, from academia, from both the machine learning community and academia, and the fields that are concerned with climate change. And we work across industry, NGOs, and with policymakers. And I hope that they provide food for thought, at least for discussion, for the coming hour. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. And I obviously, as one could expect, agree very much with you on the needs to ensure that even the regulatory requirements or the overall policy requirements for trustworthy AI preserve the orientation towards societal and environmental well-being. I say this unsurprisingly because, as many people know, I have been a member of the high-level expert group on AI that had included the societal and environmental well-being requirement among the 7 requirements of trustworthy AI. That said, there is one element that maybe we can keep for the discussion in the second half of the session, which is, should that requirement be applied to high-risk AI systems if the risk is only referred to fundamental rights and safety security? So the environmental risk, let's say, is not the basis for the risk-based approach that is being adopted in the AI Act. And or is there a way to make AI development and to trigger and demand AI that is oriented towards societal and environmental sustainability through different means? For example, in the large-scale collaborative R&D projects, through public procurement, through many other instruments. That is an open question for me. But me, as an academic that has worked pretty much on better regulation, also would like to second what you said about the need to really orient the way in which we assess every public policy at EU level towards the biggest challenge that we've given ourselves in Europe, which is related to the Green Deal and to the decarbonization of our economy. So indeed, this is also something that relates to so-called better regulation in general and the way in which we do impact assessment of our policies. Now, the need for concrete solutions, the need to demand solutions that are oriented towards these medium to long-term goals is also going to reach the sectoral level very soon, right? And the more we go down into the specific sector, the more we need to unpack the different tensions and trade-offs that we find there. One of those sectors is by no doubt, one of these sectors is agriculture, is a sector that is typically indicated as one of those that typically go beyond planetary boundaries at the moment. The full agri-food chain has this problem at the moment and this challenge, so we need solutions. I think Shireen and Stefan have already in particular mentioned the availability of potential solutions in this field. We hear from Mohamed Turkanovic, who specializes in that field, what digital technology, in his opinion, can do and is doing from his own experience to bring back the agri-food supply chain within the planetary boundaries and not create additional sources of unsustainability. So Mohammed, thanks for being with us, and I give you the floor.
Thank you, Andrea, for the possibility to speak. If I may, maybe just as an introduction, start that I kind of represent the Digital Innovation Hub and one of the candidates for the Slovenian European Digital Innovation Hub, which we think it's highly important also for facilitating the digital technologies, especially also the AI. Within the Digital Europe program, which we probably already know, it's going to be funding the upskill of the SMEs and the public sector in the form of new technologies. One of those will be also to support digital tech and infrastructure for critical role, which can then promote EU greener and more digital, etc. And the European Commission has set up the Digital Europe program, which will, through the digital innovations hubs throughout the Europe, let's say, facilitate this in a more objective manner as such. And the core here is that the AI is facilitated and promoted to the SMEs and the public government and the public sector. HPC, high performance computing, that all of those are supported by cybersecurity and etc. So the challenge that we see here is that we have to go a step lower. Of course, the government layer and the policy layer are highly important, but our role is to facilitate and support the regional and local levels. And what we see here that the companies and SMEs, well, they hear all of us talk about AI, they hear all of us talk about HPC and cybersecurity, but the thing is that they hear, but they do not listen, or they do not know what to do with it. They know that there's going to be some funding, there's going to be supporting from the EU level, but they are now in a bubble trying to find out who's going to help them to understand what can they do. And this is what our job is from the perspective of the digital innovation hubs. And we do this by let's say trying to support them with seminars, with consulting, which will hopefully be supported also by the EU. But first of all, the companies, especially SMEs, they need to understand what this technology is, where they can use it, and after that they will try to use it, because now they are not fully sure, and when they are not sure, they are not keen to invest their core capital into something that they are not 100% clear on this. And also some AI projects, or let's say big data projects, are quite complex for SMEs. They do not have the funding enough. And we had such an example with one agricultural consortium in Slovenia, where they wanted to build a consortium which would support short food supply chains, because we know that part of the green economy and digital green is also that the agriculture is supported, and they wanted to support it with digital skills, but they did not know how to. And one of our projects was also to build up a digital innovation hub agriculture. We put all the stakeholders together, included also ICT companies with the knowledge on AI, HPC, etc., and they helped to construct, let's say, an ICT solution supported also by blockchain, and include and train the people, train the farmers to understand what they do, why they do it, so that all of them then can, of course, pick up the fruits from this. So these are the challenges that we tackle, and we think that are also important for the whole AI and green throughout Europe, that we bring the action to the SMEs and the public sector.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. It's very important to highlight the role of SMEs, the fact that they are out in the open currently and waiting for perhaps some regulatory and market certainty, and looking for perhaps precise indications on which use cases will be prioritized also in terms of policy, and perhaps if all incentives are aligned also in terms of investor funding. That is something that between the local level and the EU level is very important. So perhaps later I will ask you whether you have the input that you would need from the EU level, but to anticipate this problem, we go to the EU policymakers and perhaps hear from them how they see the situation. So I will start with Svenja Han, member of the European Parliament. Svenja, thanks very much for being with us. I don't know if you were this morning in the State of the Union address, but you probably got additional inspiration for coming to join our session today about AI and green. I give you the floor.
Thank you very much. And unfortunately, I must say, this panel is very much more inspiring on digital and AI than what I heard in the State of the Union speech this morning. I understand that obviously the Commission kind of sees it as done from their perspective of having presented the DSA, the DMA, and the AI proposal, but it was really lacking to, I was really missing to hear a broader vision. Where should we be going? And especially on AI. We heard a lot this morning about infrastructure, about semiconductors, but digitization is so much more than just being independent on material. It is really about a strategy, and we are really seeing ourselves in a competition. We're seeing ourselves in a competition about standards, about values. So it was, to be honest, I was disappointed with the aspect about digitization this morning. But nevertheless, in the Parliament right now, we're working with full steam on these topics. I'm the coordinator for Renew Europe in the Special Committee for Artificial Intelligence, and also the shadow on the AI Act for my group in the Single Market Committee. And our goal is to reach a legal framework that brings Europe at the forefront of innovation. We need to make sure that AI is trustworthy. I think citizens' trust is key for a successful rollout of new technologies. For that, we need to look into several aspects, especially regarding fundamental rights. But today we want to talk about the Green Deal. And there also, obviously, we need to talk about ethical aspects. And if we remember, digital and green transition are the key priorities of this Commission. The European Parliament is fully behind these goals for Europe. And if we take a look at the budget, because politics is always where the money is at, then we see that the multi-annual financial framework and the COVID recovery fund, the Next Generation EU, have a very huge part to green transition and digital transition. And I think this is good, because I'm absolutely convinced there is not going to be a successful green transition without a successful digital transition. Because the future to making the Green Deal happen is not in not doing things that we're doing anymore, but doing it differently, doing it better, and doing it much cleaner. And I think digital technologies can give the EU even the competitive edge to lead with smart environmental transition, to boost the impact of environmental policies. But obviously, and I think I heard it with the first speaker, we're talking about ever-growing data volumes that we produce, that we collect. AI can help perform better data analytics, monitor, process, deliver environmental performance, risk reduction, all kind of aspects. But obviously, this costs a lot of energy as well. So this is something we need to address. But in general, I think the promising feature of AI is to become effective, become more inclusive, which needs appropriate infrastructure, computing power, sensors, skills. So I think it's important that we really make sure that the investments under the climate and digital spending are really directed to support these goals. And when we talk about what are the threats, I already mentioned it takes a high energy consumption. So we also need to address the real environmental and social costs and benefit of AI solutions. So having all this together, I think we are on a good path to really set a framework for a successful digital decade in the EU. And we already heard, I think you mentioned agriculture, traffic management, health sector. There is so much potential. And we cannot imagine everything quite yet. So I think we need to, with the AI Act that is on the table, which we're working on, we need to set a framework that sets red lines, safeguards fundamental rights. This is a trust issue. But on the same side, we cannot overregulate. We cannot foresee everything. And this is something lawmakers tend to. We overregulate things that happened in the past. Now we need to set a good framework for something that's going to happen in the future. So this is where I absolutely see the challenge, because then we can allow that there isn't going to be new solutions for environmental problems, for challenges like the negative ecological footprint of some technologies that are still there. And then I absolutely believe that environmental protection, green transition of our society and economy can go hand in hand if we embrace innovation and new ideas. So yeah, that's my mindset from the European Parliament. I'm looking forward to the rest of the debate, and thank you everyone so much for your input so far.
Thanks a lot, Svenja. And this is a very comprehensive and systemic picture, which I think is badly needed in shaping policies for AI. AI needs complementary technologies, needs its own ecosystem to flourish. It needs alignment of incentives to coherent public policies. So it is a difficult thing to achieve. Also, in the context of the twin transition, meaning AI is also most importantly a means to an end and not an end in and of itself. And its deployment has to be compatible with the broader objectives, including decarbonisation, but also the social dimensions of it. So this is perfect to make it an impossible formula, which leads me to Evangelia, which is the one that has to cook the whole thing together and make it a successful policy recipe. Evangelia, you are obviously free to comment on what you've heard so far, and obviously you will tell us a little bit what is in the plans of the Commission going forward, in particular the intersection of AI and green. So I give you the floor for your intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you. Thank everybody for having me on this panel. I think it's a very important and crucial panel. What we're going to discuss, it's very difficult, of course, to come last. I thought it would be easy, but I think my colleagues have made it very difficult. But let me start by talking about this summer, because the summer was marked, I think, for us here in Europe, not only by the COVID crisis and how we're handling this, but also by extreme weather conditions, from drought to severe flooding in some countries to extreme heat waves, like I experienced also in Greece, and also the worst wildfires that we've seen in Europe. So I think we all here in Europe have seen firsthand the implications of climate change. So we are fully all well aware of that. But it was also the summer that the European climate law has entered into force. I don't know how many are aware of that. And it's actually the law that puts in place the goals that we set out in the European Green Deal. So making Europe's economy and society become climate neutral by 2050 and achieve actually also zero greenhouse gas emissions in Europe. By cutting, of course, emissions, but also by investing in green technologies. I mean, we discussed today, AI is crucial in that. David Rolnick today also early in a keynote speech, he mentioned the various examples. My colleagues also mentioned today the examples where AI can really help make a difference, help tackle climate change. And we are all definitely aware for the positive, but also some negative impacts AI can have, especially when reaching the Sustainable Development Goals. So as Svenja also mentioned, and you too, Andrea, when we talk about the green transition, we talk inevitably also about the digital transition. That's why we always talk about the twin transition. One is leading the other, and one can impact the other. But I think to achieving both, you need innovation. If you overregulate, it's been said, you hinder innovation. So we need to stimulate innovation in Europe to really address climate change, and artificial intelligence is a very key aspect of this. I mean, in reaching this green transition, but also in the digital transition of our economy. But I think it's important, not only because I'm working in the unit that deals with artificial intelligence technology, but I see examples how it can help us really reach a climate neutral society. But as I said, to get there, you need innovation. In order to innovate, you need to invest in research. Now, what we need to accelerate, definitely, and this is what we are planning under the Horizon Europe program, the multi-annual financial framework program. One of the main research programs is the Horizon Europe program. What we will try is to fund, and we start already with calls this year, to focus on how AI can really contribute to the sustainable production in major application areas, and support research and innovation activities when it comes to zero defect production, towards zero waste, zero emission, and smart manufacturing, because you need to improve also the manufacturing process. What we will also fund is, of course, because when we talk about AI and green, we talk about green AI, but AI for green. So, I mean, there is this kind of what AI can do to improve, but also how to make AI more sustainable. So also algorithms. So we will fund also activities, research activities in that, in coming up with optimized algorithms, machine learning algorithms, but also to use as little as possible energy and electricity, for example, this is the environmental footprint when we are having to process a vast amount of data. So there are a lot of things that are happening also under Horizon Europe that I mentioned, but we also have, as DG Connect, a standalone program. It's called the DigitalEU program. My colleague Mohammed mentioned it when it comes to the European Digital Innovation Hubs. What we will also do with support starting from 22 are the so-called testing and experimentation hubs facilities for AI applications in the area of smart cities, smart communities, so also green communities, manufacturing, energy, but also agri-food, which together with the member states, it was decided that these are key crucial areas, sectors that we need to invest in now. That doesn't mean that we will only look into those sectors, but these were the ones that also member states have identified as crucial. So, and Mohammed said it, I mean, we need really this broad deployment of AI competences. It's not just that we have researchers that understand the implications of AI, we need also the general public to understand it. And we believe that the European Digital Innovation Hubs and that network will really help also SMEs, but also public administrations to understand how AI can improve sustainability and can help in their daily processes. So that would have been from my side, but it's not just this, what we will also do, because you mentioned also data. Some of you mentioned data. There will be also on the DigitalEU program, the creation of a data space, green data space for climate neutral and smart communities. And we will also develop, it was mentioned, the digital twin. It's called the Destination Earth Initiative, the digital twin of the Earth, which will allow this digital simulation to better address climate change, but also to forecast extreme weather conditions, etc., etc. So all of that is being done at the research, innovation, but also deployment activities that we will undergo under the two important programs. But as I said, climate change is not regional, it's not just European. I think it's global. And today, I think Ursula von der Leyen mentioned that, I mean, we need global partners also to address this. So with the US, we have joint plans to address climate change and sustainability, but US is one of the global partners. We need to do it with other international partners too. I will close here because I have a lot more to say, but I prefer to have the discussion going. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Evangelia. This could have easily been a 3-hour, 4-hour session, but you know, we all do with the time that we have available, and it's a way to also table some of these issues. I have a question for you and for Svenja, and then maybe I'll go then gradually back towards the previous speakers as we sort of do a sort of a zooming out from the EU-related issues. Many member states are now formulating their national resilience and recovery plans, right? And this is perhaps where some of the famous 20% of the funds earmarked for digital, the 37 for climate, this will be a key moment to ensure that the way these funds are spent is compatible with the twin transition, right? How can this be done? Is the timing right, or are the investment priorities being formulated before the Commission actually is able to fully evaluate the consequences of the interplay between these investments?
I mean,
yeah, Evangelia.
What I want to say is that, of course, I mean, we have the national plans, we received them, but the Commission was there right from the start, helping member states actually to give also feedback to the draft plans and see, I mean, to what extent it's in line when it comes to artificial intelligence, for example, also in the coordinated plan that we have with member states. We know that the majority of member states have already a national AI strategy. And so, I mean, the feedback was given on all actually digital kind of of technologies that was addressed, at least from our side, from DG Connect. What I know for sure is that we have overreached even the target of 20% when it comes to digital and green. So I think this is the moment, if not, I mean, is this just really the moment where everything has to start? The next steps are, of course, crucial, that the funding arrives, and then actually also the member states start as early as possible to implement all those actions. It's very important, of course, for this digital transformation to happen, and all of this, that we have also the public administrations embracing all of this. But as far as I've seen personally from looking at some of these plans, I'm very confident that we are on the right track. But as I said, the next steps are also crucial, then the actual implementation from theory to practice.
Thank you, Evangelia. I might want to hear Stania as well on this, and perhaps Lynn later, because where I want to go is to really looking at the coordinated action plan on AI on the one hand, but also on the way the different plans, national plans for resilience and recovery will be evaluated, because the JRC, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, has worked in proposing a dashboard for resilience, but the climate proofing, if you wish, of these plans is in the hands of the Commission largely. And so is this enough? Do we have enough tools and instruments to steer member states towards a more concerted, orchestrated action that will help realize with this huge amount of money or make at least the twin transition more possible? Svenja, what do you think?
Well, obviously the Parliament would like to have more of a say in that, but we're really going to carefully scrutinize what the Commission is approving, what the member states are doing, because what we cannot afford to let happen is that this huge amount of money for which we're taking that onto the EU budget is not used in an appropriate way, is not used towards future-proof innovation and towards future-proof investment programs. We can really not, and we cannot afford to have so much money spent in the EU that is not spent to good cause. From what we've seen from some member states, they're ambitious. From what we've seen from other member states, including my own, it was more rebranding what they anyways had planned and taking EU money for that. So we're going to take a very, very careful look from the Parliament side. And let's not fool ourselves. We're not in the near future going to take so much money into our hands. So really hope that the Commission is being extremely careful and not giving into any kind of political pressure when it comes regarding this the spendings.
Thanks, Tanya. That's going to be tough, right? So, Lynn, I don't know if you have an opinion about this. Do we have the right tools? Are we seizing this once in a generation opportunity?
I mean, that's obviously a very big question, but maybe I can share some thoughts that just came to mind. So especially if we talk about resilience, we're really talking about local governance, right? So we need to somehow equip cities, local stakeholders with the right tools and with access to also knowledge and expertise, which currently is still very expensive. So I think I would encourage to at least think this piece through. It's like, who's going to do the work in the end, and who's also going to maintain especially AI projects in the long run, or data platforms and so on, because those stakeholders do have some agency as well, right? So if you're the one building the model, maintaining the model, you also have some decision power that you essentially have. So thinking through how local governments can actually leverage AI and digital technologies in a meaningful way and in a not very risky way, especially on short time scales, I think is so far still an unsolved problem in some sense. That would be my primary thought on the resilience piece here.
There's more work to be done, and on the side of academics, I think we have to feel the same responsibility of the other players. So I put yourself and myself obviously in this basket here. And Mohammed, it's basically I want to follow a similar thread with you. Do you see this conversation percolating down to the local level, or do you think there is something to improve on the side of the incentive, the direction, and also the priorities that are communicated to the local level, for example, in the Digital Innovation Hub? You can be diplomatic if you want, but not too much. And you have 1 minute.
Yeah, start and maybe finalize with the words of Ursula von der Leyen when she once mentioned that the EU is very good to do research with money, but now it has to find also the way to do money with research, or to create money with research. And I think there is something that we need to emphasize. The EU should, through the member states, try to support these risky research and development projects, support venture capital, because when these projects could go bust, but they can also bring the EU in front of the world and help all of these green transition through digital, etc. And this is one point. We need more research and development on risky projects, on AI, on HPC, etc. But on the other form, the member states through the EU should also be supported financially and organizationally, that the SMEs start to use these digital skills. And this could be through incentives. This can be done through the member states by, the member state could say, we give tax reductions if some digital skills are used or digital technologies are used. Member states could support and fund trainings for SMEs to use these digital twins. The EU could maybe fund more cascading projects on the EU level, where then the SMEs would use it, because we know on the horizon there are a lot of big companies which are very good at getting those funds, but the SMEs cannot get towards it because they are not so well, let's say, thrilled. Maybe with cascading projects, maybe this money could go also to the SMEs. So these are some thoughts where I see we could go further.
Thanks, Mohammed. Loud and clear. And I now turn to our two initial speakers, Stefan and Shireen, because I want to bring the last few minutes of our conversation to the global collaborative level. What space you think there is for creating a deeper international cooperation, and more mission-oriented, if you wish, international cooperation on AI and green? I called it in my op-ed the International Earth Station, but just to give it like an idea of a global collaborative project that is on Earth, not in space, and looks at planet Earth in a specific way. So I don't know, Stefan, maybe you want to go first and see what you see as the prospects for international cooperation from your vantage point, and then we will close with Shireen.
I mean, we have some first experiences when it comes to interacting with international organizations like UNEP. We are looking into what was mentioned earlier on improving the literacy, the knowledge, the expertise on AI, so that there is probably some common training programs which we can reuse, because I mean the questions are pretty much the same for all of us. Earlier on we mentioned digital twins or Destination Earth by the name. This is an initiative which is open to many partners. Actually, you cannot do it alone as one institution, even not as a big institution. So that is clearly a partnership initiative. And with all the data out there, let's say from the Copernicus satellites, I mean, we have an excellent opportunity to look broader than the regional level, the national level, or the European level. So that is very much appreciated. I like to make two remarks on what has been discussed earlier on. I think from all the discussions with our stakeholders in the environmental climate administration domain in Europe, we still have to see that artificial intelligence, the opportunities and the possibilities are still too little known. The access to funding, like from the Digital Europe program, is not really very transparent. So more can happen to create awareness and to give access to resources. And also, I hope that we are able to strengthen the infrastructure, the data spaces which were talked about. How is artificial intelligence exactly being used in these data spaces? How can, let's say, interested institutions connect to them? That needs to be still better informed. And just from a European perspective, SMEs were mentioned as well. I mean, of course, we would also like to see European solution providers in the AI area to be strengthened, because we see many big players who are not initially coming from Europe, who are very much dominating the solutions. And we like to, as Europeans, we like to push our own good ideas, and all these funds which are put out there now under the twin transition also to good use. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. As we are about to wrap up, I give the floor to Shireen with basically the same question. How do you see this unfolding?
This is a very interesting and important question, and you owe me one for putting me as the last one on this, truly. I'll come back to you for our December events, and to the panel. But really, I think if we think about it, and I will have rather a series of questions rather than definitive answers, but really inspired by this session. Let us first agree that whatever is going on in terms of the vision, the work that's happening in Europe at the moment, there is no doubt that this is revolutionary, it's new, it will pave the way for the future, although some may be cynical, some may be, this will pave the way. There's no doubt about that. Having said that, I think there are several elements that we may need to think about, and we will think about, especially as we prepare towards, as I told, global working group that we're putting together for early December, hopefully. So between the Digital Europe program, for example, and the brilliant examples that Mohammed gave throughout Europe, targeting public enterprise, SMEs, and then the national resilience and climate plans, the twin transitions, the use of digital in those. When we look across these projects, to what extent do reverse efforts will provide the impact we want? How?
Shireen, we are losing you. Your voice got choppy and then we lost you. So
is there a way?
Maybe you, for your final remarks, you want to switch off the video.
Can you? Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes. A little bit better.
Okay. I can.
Switch off the video, please. Yes.
Okay, I'm in Nairobi. Do forgive me. The internet does play. Okay, so I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Okay, so what I was saying is that between the different projects, between the national resilience and climate plans and the digital innovation hubs, the Digital Europe program, how are we actually thinking in terms of impact, collective impact at scale, both within Europe and internationally? Are we able to measure that and say, assign, for example, an ambitious figure that says, this is the ambition, this is how impact globally in terms of what Europe is doing is going to be measured, and this is how it's going to be articulated. And I think this is one of the key questions that we will be asking when we convene globally in December as part of the working group that the UN is working on. The other one is in terms of exponential technologies. Now, this is kind of it's a sensitive point, but it's a very important point that I think Stefan very, wisely talked about. And I'm not, I cannot really speak from a European perspective, but I think in all the global conversations that we've had, in all of our convening, especially the ones where we held the convening in Europe, the question of who owns the technology. I think there is a need to see more European technologies, more homegrown European technologies in that space, because otherwise the equity component, the wider discussion becomes difficult. It's very much US dominated. And this is the fact. And of course there's China and the brand of technology in China, which is amazing, being used, AI, the Chinese Academy of Sciences using it and developing it further for Earth observations. And we work very closely together. Now, in the middle of that, and in order to create the balance we want, I think there is need for this voice. Can we work on, creating a compendium that is visible and that brings a voice to that space? We are already working with some, but there is need for more, and there is need for consolidation. So we will come back on this one to you, Andrea, and the team as we plan for our own events. I want to alert that there is a beautiful initiative called DEAL, the Big Data Initiative for the Environment. This is led by 24 governments, most of them from Europe, still to be announced in a big way, but I think there are many steps being taken in the right direction, and we hope to be part of that. So I'll stop here with a call to also consider pretty much what Svenja mentioned and I mentioned before about social justice in this context. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shireen. We are wrapping up this session. It's a pity because I would have wanted to go deeper into each and everything that you mentioned. If I can sum up with this, I think what we discovered is, first of all, it's difficult, it's complicated, it's also urgent, and no one can go it alone when it comes to AI and green, and there's a need for international collaboration and coordination of all levels of government. To reproduce one of my favorite sayings, people say that if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And I think all the levels of governments that are represented here and all the different players that are at the table, including citizens and the community of data scientists, need to be taken on board if this matching of AI potential with the climate urgency is to really work for the better and for the future of humanity and the planet. Thank you very much. I leave all of you to the rest of our wonderful AI conference, and thank all the organizers for putting us together in this fantastic virtual room. And have a good afternoon, and talk to each of you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thanks for convening.